Okay, the last elasticity we're going to look at then is income elasticity demand. In many ways, it's the simplest of all of them. Although there's some confusion over terminology that we'll come to in a minute, particularly over what's meant by a normal good. Income elasticity demand is pretty straightforward. It shows what happens to demand when income changes. So, in terms of terminology, it shows the responsiveness of demand to a change in income, or in formula terms, it has the same formula that elasticity things always have. So on the top, you've got the percentage change in quantity demanded. On the bottom, you've got the percentage change in something financial. In this case, it's income. So what we're saying then is that if, say, income rises, what's going to happen to demand? Or if income falls, what's going to happen to demand? What would usually happen is what we got on this side here, which I'm not sure which way that's going to be when you look at it, the left, is going to be, normally when income rises, demand rises, and when income falls, demand falls. So what you got there is you've got a positive correlation. Income and demand are moving in the same direction. So we have that positive linkage, and in terms of formal terms, what you've got is these things are known as normal goods because they behave in the way that one would normally expect. In other words, that demand moves in the same direction as income, meaning there's a positive correlation, meaning that income elasticity demand is positive. But obviously, elasticity shows the extent to which there is change. So normal goods, what might happen, is that suppose we get a 10%, say, increase in income. What might happen is that demand might rise by 0 to 10%, in which case that's normal and inelastic. Income elasticity demand will be 0 to 1, or it might be that the 10% increase in income leads to a 10% or more than 10% change in demand, increase in demand. In this case, it will be elastic, and income elasticity demand will be above 1, above +1. So normal goods, they could be either elastic or inelastic. What defines a normal good is that it has positive income elasticity demand. Students seem to think that it's something to do with price elasticity demand, normal goods, for reasons that I've never really understood, but it isn't. It's just showing if income changes, what happens to demand. If demand changes in the same direction as income, that's normal. Hence, we have a normal good. It could be normal elastic or normal inelastic. Likewise, with inferior goods, what we're expecting to see, an inferior good, is one where, there are going to be certain things where, as income rises, demand falls, because these are things that consumers don't really want anymore. As they become rich, demand falls. So for some people, you might argue bus travel is inferior. As income rises, you can get yourself a car, travel by taxi or something. So as income rises, demand falls. Likewise, in a recession, however, when incomes are falling, there are demand for certain types of things that rose. The example that I think I've often used is Domino's did very well during the financial crisis, because as people's incomes fell, they didn't want to go out to restaurants anymore, so instead they stayed in. They couldn't be bothered to cook, so they ordered in pizza instead. But the point is here that they're moving in different directions. Therefore, your income elasticity is negative in this case. So, and what we got goods which are inferior. Although there's not really any such thing as an inferior good. What's inferior for me may be very different for you. What's inferior for Richard Branson is probably very different to what's inferior for either of us. So, but again, they could be either inferior and inelastic or inferior and elastic. So it could be that suppose income goes up by 10%, then demand might fall by 0 to 10%, in which case that's inelastic, or it might go down by 10% or more, in which case it would be inferior and elastic. But basically, that's your game. And obviously, there's if you were to be aware of this, then there are some uses that business could make of it. If you knew your product was perceived as inferior, then maybe when times are economically very good, maybe you'll do something about that. Maybe you'll try and change consumers' perceptions. So what that means diagrammatically is, suppose this is suppose we look at the demand for bus travel, and let's suppose that's income and that's quantity. But until income reaches Y1, you don't travel. until income reaches Y1, you ain't gonna travel. You ain't gonna travel on the bus at all. As income rises above Y1, suddenly it's, hey, I can afford a bus, lucky me. And suddenly demand starts to rise quite rapidly. Above Y2, income continues to rise further, and it's going, oh, bus, how thrilling. Demand continues to rise, but more slowly, until finally, when income rises above Y3, it's like, thank goodness for that. I'm going to take a taxi. So it's going to vary, according to person, depending on where you are and so on. So, but fundamentally, so here, the gradient is negative. We have negative income elasticity demand. That's an inferior good. Whereas here the gradient is positive, and we've got normal goods. So it's inferior in that zone and normal in that zone. And that's your lot, basically. That's income elasticity demand.